What's going on social media? Chilling. It's Saturday. I'm out and about, just minding my business, kind of just handling things for the most part. Washing clothes this morning like I usually do. Got me a little bit of a coffee, and I'm gonna head to the gym this morning. And I just wanted to get some thoughts off. You know what I mean? Same as always, but just this was a topic that's a little bit more personal to me, I guess, and that is keeping an open mind, right? Now, personally, I consider myself a very open-minded and understanding individual, and I think I feel like I'm open-minded to a point where it's like it frustrates me to deal with people that are not open-minded, and that's where it's gotten to a point where, personally, with me, it's becoming like a pet peeve. Like, I can't stand a non-open-minded person. I don't like talking to a person that has a very close perspective, because it's like, I can't get anything from a motherfucker only thinking in their direction, because as a guy, especially as a man, I have to see the entire game board for what it is. And I do have a couple talking points in reference to this, right? And I do have item one, right? I don't like how most people handle conversations or things that reference that don't like necessarily fit into their narrative, or just, fucking bugs. Or when someone thinks something that, someone else doesn't believe in or whatever, like you only think from your perspective. I don't like shit like that, right? Because look, even if you were a guy and you told me your thing is like, I don't know, you like to get pegged for example, and I know that's a very extreme example, right? You were just into getting pegged, for example, and that's just your shit. I'm not gonna look at you crazy for that. I mean, like, in the sense of like, just understanding that that's your lifestyle. Or let's say you're someone that doesn't believe in working for other companies, or like working for Walmart, or working a job. Like, I can connect with that thought because I'm someone of the open mind. That's, I can see from your perspective why you wouldn't want to work that job. And I think one of the things that gets me rubbed the wrong way is when a motherfucker only can see their piece on the chessboard and not think and consider other people in it when it comes in the sense of like, the entire picture. It's kind of almost as if like, when perspective A doesn't agree with perspective B, right? Y'all do this shit where y'all get mad at perspective A because it doesn't agree with perspective B. When perspective B came from a whole different upbringing versus perspective A that came from a whole different walk of life. I'm someone that's from the hood, all right? So, like, okay, one of the things, the conversations me and my girlfriend sometimes often have is, like, I have to often understand sometimes that my life, like, everybody else's life isn't based around the hood shit that I grew up around. Does that make sense? Like, girls night out doesn't necessarily mean, like, oh, I'm going to go shake my ass with a bunch of, like, bitches and talk to niggas. But that's, like, my hood thinking. It's just one of those things that just annoys me when people can't necessarily connect to a thought that's not necessarily born inside the space between their ears. It's just one of those things that just annoys me when people, like, one of the things that has helped me throughout my life is just learning to see things from the other perspective. Like, okay, I have a girlfriend, a sister, a mother, I know people, you know what I mean? And it's one of those things with me where it's like, when you learn to look at shit from the woman perspective, it helps you kind of piece together the entire picture of what might actually be going on. Meaning, like, okay, personally, right, I'm a guy's guy when it comes to this podcast shit, right? But that being a guy's guy isn't one of those things that comes without the understanding of what might be happening on the female spectrum in relation to a dude. Does that make sense? And it's one of those things with me, it kind of really pets my peeve when I deal with people that only see things from, like, their narrative. And it's one of those things with me, or just their own unique walk of life. You know what I mean? Like, I sometimes think about Georgia from time to time, right? And I think sometimes what happened to me is that I outgrew a lot of shit that was happening there, right? Motherfuckers from Georgia, a lot of times they want you to be on this, oh, let's hang out at the park or hang out at MLK Boulevard, let's go to the hood clubs and everything. And look, for a time in my life, that was cool, right? But eventually you get to a point where if you are a person that is constantly taking in information and constantly expanding yourself as a person, you tend to look at things on a bigger scale, or, you tend to think about your life in totality. I just personally never saw myself like living and dying in Southeast Georgia for the most part, as far as the human being I've become currently. Now, item 2, right? Open-mindedness to relationships. If I had to guess how many girlfriends I've had, and I think this is a ballpark number, I've had like 8, right? And sleeping around with girls and that versus having like girlfriends, you get 2 different learning curves from each experience for the most part, right? For a guy to really be married, to be in a long-term relationship, I think there's a level of navigation you got to have to do that. Meaning like, you have to kind of understand women from a broad spectrum. One of the things that, help me understand women in a sense of like the total picture is being a side guy, right? When you're a side dude, right, you see the real foul, nasty shit that girls are really capable of. Does that mean that everybody's like that? No, I don't believe that everybody is like that. But what I'm saying is, I think it's a tenure that a guy should serve. I think every dude does need to be a side nigga at some point, because you need to see how real this shit get. And when I say side guy, right, when I'm talking about being a side guy, that means you kind of have, when I say serving a tenure as a side dude, that's just understanding the dark reality of what's going on, and then being able to make moves based on that. What I mean by I have an open mind to relationships, I'm one of them kind of people, like, I don't see shit one-dimensional. Just based on my experiences and the things I've done, and, I've tried to be married before, I've had a kid before, you know what I mean? Once you go through all that, like, okay, in a sense, like, once you get married once, or like you have a kid once, or you live certain aspects of life, or, you know what I mean? It's personally one of the things you become to find out where you fit at in the grand scheme of the spectrum. Like, for instance, one of the conversations me and my girlfriend was having last night, it's like her Halloween costume, so to speak, right? And the narrative that's put out there to the internet is, oh, I don't want my girl wearing this, right? And I've come to understand about myself is that I don't really give a shit what a motherfucker wear. It's more so how you act when you with me, right? Whether you butt naked or not, or you got on the whole nun outfit or not, if a motherfucker want to find a way to get to some shit, they're going to find a way to get to some shit. Does that mean that every girl acts and, maneuvers within those 2 spectrums? No. But what I'm saying is like, it's one of those things where you have your own perspective, or you make your own rules on your own life based on what your knowledge of the situation is. And when you think about it, you can take that same thing and apply it to being a side chick. Like, I think some girls need to serve turns as a side chick, because look, for the most part, everybody doesn't have their best interest at heart. Everybody doesn't have your best interest at heart. Like, there's a such thing as being too good of a person. Like, you can be a good person, you can, eat your vitamins, say your prayers, and all other shit, go to church on Sundays and all the other shit. But I do think that there's a level of toxicity that you got to have to being a person. Meaning, like, there's got to be a part of you that doesn't compromise on the things you believe in, or just the shit that you fucking with, or the things you stand for. Like, when I say don't compromise, meaning like, it shouldn't feel like you having to pretend to be someone else to be with the person you're with. You know what I mean? Not only that, but I'm one of them kind of people when it comes to this relationship shit, I don't expect motherfuckers to not make mistakes, to do no dumb shit. Because I've come to understand that most motherfuckers do not have the discipline that it takes to be in a 30-year relationship without doing something stupid. That's not it. I'm coming to understand that that's not even human nature. Now, you have some people, they're never going to fuck you over regardless of what the fuck is going on, right? Just like you have some guys that are, the men that can pay all the bills. You know what I mean? Some dudes can pay all the bills, and then there's dudes that just can't, right? And I think sometimes when people are asking for certain shit from the world, they're not thinking of where that may fall on the scale. Meaning, like, okay, finding a good, solid woman, right? If I had to line up 10 women and pick out which ones are, and put a number to how many motherfuckers are actually going to be solid and then not cheat, right? It might be 2, right? I don't think most girls have the discipline to be on some type of shit where it's like, I'm going to really be home, be submissive to my man, and do right by him, or whatever the case may be, right? And I think that same thing applies vice versa when y'all are asking these guys for all this, like, oh, I want a man that's going to pay all the bills and lead and be a leader. I think the things that the internet teaches you to ask from people are so scattered to the point where you can't really find nobody that's going to act on that, right? So, I mean, I just have come to, like, understand where I belong in the grand scheme of the planet. Does that make sense? Like, I don't expect motherfuckers to not fuck up. I don't expect motherfuckers to not make mistakes. I don't expect motherfuckers to be in relationships that are just the traditional fashion. I think we're moving. I think as a society, we're moving away from the traditional relationship. I think there are motherfuckers that don't want to get married. I think there are women that don't want to have kids. I think there are men that don't never want to settle down and want to have a harem of women. You know what I mean? Pretty much anything you want out of this life is on this planet. You just have to go out there and find it for the most part, right? But I'm just saying, when it comes to the perspective of relationships and just how people think and their perspectives and things that they feel or whatever, I'm someone that keeps a very open mind to that fact. You know what I mean? If you were to tell me that you were on some, I don't know, you in a relationship with 3 people, then be in a relationship with 3 people. It's your fucking life, dog. You know what I mean? Because I've had several girlfriends, right? And the one thing I've come to understand from having like 8 or 9 girlfriends and being a side piece is that by nature, right? I think women, for the most part, if you had to ask me what I truly think, if I had to compile all my experience together, I think y'all are built to be inconsistent. Meaning, like, if you get a guy that's almost too consistent, you like it, but you sometimes can't stand it, right? Which means if you are in a 10-year relationship with a motherfucker, with a guy that's consistent, right? Does all the right shit's good person for the most part, doesn't do no fuck shit. I think sometimes y'all don't fuck with a dude that don't do fuck shit a little bit, because it's almost like it's too good. Like, it's the same thing when you get a girl that don't do no bullshit. It's like, that's great and all, and that's cool that you don't do no bullshit, but like, where's the excitement a little bit? Like, so it's just, I'm one of them kind of people. I try to see the entire planet, I try to see the entire spectrum of just life 360. I try to consider everything on the board. And I think sometimes what happens in dating is that a lot of y'all are very closed-minded, meaning like, you have this notion that people are going to go against their nature for you, if that makes sense. Even a guy, for instance, like, men are naturally non-monogamous, right? Naturally, right? And a lot of y'all keep trying to get men to be monogamous, right? The only thing that's going to make a man be monogamous is a man that wants to be monogamous. Like, that's my thought, right? And sometimes I think guys will try to put women in the space where they're never emotional. The only thing that's going to make a girl not be emotional or not have feelings or not, function as a woman is a woman that doesn't want to, right? That's just a matter of choice. Which brings me to my next point, right? I hate talking to a narrow-minded motherfucker. I can't stand it. Like, it's really one of those things that agitates me to a point that makes me check out the conversation completely. If you really want to know what I think, right? I don't like talking to people that are closed-minded. Because, like, really, when you think about it in the grand scheme, how do you really learn anything if your mind's never open to accepting a perspective other than your own? For instance, right? I'm a person that gives a lot of advice, just in general. Or I'm someone whose brain gets picked a lot, in general, right? And the one thing I can't stand is when a motherfucker asks me for advice, they go do what the fuck they want to do anyway to come back and ask for more advice. I remember having female friends when I was probably in my early 20s, and motherfuckers would call me all the time to cry about some dude they was fucking with, to be upset and get mad, and I'm bothered. I don't understand why he won't commit to me and do right by me. You tell them how to fix the problem, and then they go and then re-fuck the dude who keeps taking them through the shit. Now, again, the older I've gotten, the more I've come to understand that a lot of girls don't want you to fix the problem. They just want you to listen to it. Meaning, like, a lot of girls are not about solutions in general. So when you're giving advice, you got to give advice to a person that actually wants the solution to the problem versus, like, understanding when a person just wants to be heard and then they want to go back to doing what they want to do. Like, what I'm saying is some girls relish in being the victim. Like, they like the idea of things not being their fault. They like the idea of being the one that got done wrong, because I think it gives them a space to explore certain feelings. That's just the thought I have. And the big point I'm trying to make here is that if you're not open to receiving that information in a space of, like, for instance, if I tell you everything that I just told you as far as about, sometimes girls want to just be victims, or sometimes a motherfucker just wants their story. I'm not even going to put it specifically on women. Some people just want to be victims, right? And if I told you that some people just want to be victims, that when you're talking to them, that they're not actually trying to get a solution to their problem, and then you don't hear me when I tell you that, you are also going to get caught up in that same loop with this motherfucker, talking to a motherfucker that likes the idea of being a victim and doesn't want to do more with their life. You know what I mean? Like the point I was making with that is more so like just being open-minded to receiving information that exists outside of the things that you believe. Like that's how you grow, if you ask me, right? Because if I only thought from my perspective, if my perspective was the only one that I took in, like for instance, like for a relationship to work between man and woman, right? If you only consider your perspective only, I mean, like, okay, your girlfriend or wife might give you feedback about something that may be going wrong in the household, right? But because you only see things from your perspective, how can you expect it to work for both people when you're not even considering the other person? You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to be easy for a relationship to work if you never keep an open mind to everything that's being brought to the table and every aspect of the situation that's being brought, to the forefront in order to make you a more well-rounded person. That's why they kind of say the game is to be sold and not told for the most part, right? Because a motherfucker can't just blindly hand you information, right? You got to get next to a person that knows more than you do. Like, and what the problem is, a lot of y'all want to be the smartest person in the room. Meaning, like, you want to be the one knowing everything, right? If you know everything, there's nothing else left to learn, if that makes sense. Which brings me to my next point, right? People that are not willing to be coached. Now, I want to say this is more so women, low-key. Like, look, it's not that y'all are not smart. It's not that women don't have brains. Like, a lot of y'all are smart as a motherfucker. But with being smart, you are also the kind of motherfucker that feel like they can't listen. Like, the thing with being a guy is you can sit there and be the kind of person that don't listen and don't take nothing in, and you only want to see things from your perspective. The thing about being a dude is you don't get to, like, slip the jab when it comes to life. Like, if anything happened to me, if I do anything stupid or if I fuck up, I have to wear the brunt of it. Sometimes I wear the brunt from other people's mistakes for the most part, right? And I think as a woman, sometimes you get to, like, shift blame on other shit, right? Not only that, but a lot of y'all get raised in a space where you're coddled, so to speak. Like, look, there's nothing wrong with being a daddy's girl, right? Being a daddy's girl becomes a problem when you can't listen and shit else nobody else is telling you. And I mean, like, for your own damn benefit, like, to make you a better person. Like, look, none of us get better by only listening to our own subconscious. You don't improve that way, right? It's just, as a guy, it's like, no, I can't even say it's just a guy. I think it's one of those things where it's like, it's a little bit of both sides. Because there's some dudes that are dense as a motherfucker too. Like, I can think of one dude off the top of my head. Like, my homeboy's friend got a wife. His wife doing all type of fuck shit. And we keep trying to tell him shit. He got this thing going on where it's like, because I got money, it's going to be all right. Like, and nothing could be further from the truth. But what I mean by willing to be coached, right, is that if you're willing to be coached, if you're willing to listen, if you're willing to keep an open mind and understand, or at least try to understand what's going on, or, like, taking things that are outside of your comfort zone. Like, I think my greatest leaps and bounds and growths come from, me almost being forced into a position and me adapting to said position versus, like, me making a choice to do so, right? Because I don't get to duck anything. Because when you think about it, right, a fish grows to the size of its fish tank. When you really, like, put it all in perspective, like, it's one of those things when I think about living back in Southeast Georgia, it's like, I wouldn't, if I'd have kept staying there, I would have never got better. Because you can only do so much in an environment like that. And that's any environment that doesn't, like, serve you or make you, stronger as a person. Like, you'll always be the same person you are because you never want to do anything different to, like, move outside of the perspective and the things that only you believe, right? How can you get better at something if you never try anything different, or if you never, like, read a book, or just take in some information that's not of the belief that you fuck with, right? You know what I mean? I personally never shut out anything that's outside of the things that I think, because I could learn something from a person that's not from the walk of life that I do. You know what I mean? Now, with all that being said, you still have to be yourself at the end of the day, right? I can sit here and tell you, and look, keeping an open mind, personally, to me, is a big deal. But at the same time, you have to still be you. You can't take on so much shit to the point where you pretend that, like, you're cosplaying as someone else, right? Look, I understand influences. I understand people giving you knowledge. I understand being open-minded to relationships or just, different lifestyles and just the shit that people have going on. But when you really think about it, you have to be you at the end of the day. It has to be something that resonates with you as a person, right? The information and all the other stuff is great, but if you can't take it in and really apply it to your own life and make it work for you, you ain't gonna really get anywhere with it. That's like, okay, there's a million people in the world that are trying to be dating coaches, right? There's a whole slew of dating coaches on the internet, right? But you have to pick the dating coach that resonates with you and the lifestyle that you want to live with and the things you're trying to do. The great thing about this day and time, even though the internet makes motherfuckers act stupid as fuck, is that, we do live in the age of information. If you want to learn something, there are people out there that know it, and they're not as hard to get a hold of, versus like back in the day, there was no technology. So your environment and the people that you knew in your circle, that was as smart as you're going to get. Like, you only get as far as the people that you talk to or communicate with for a reason, right? Because if you know a small circle of people, or you have a small circle of like information, you're only going to progress so far, right? So I just think when it comes to keeping an open mind, that it's one of those things that it's a necessity. It's a big thing for me. It's something that I feel like most people can benefit from. I think it's just one of those things that frustrates me a lot when I hear, when I have to talk to someone that's like talking to a brick wall, right? Because it's like, sometimes I see shit in other people that they don't see in themselves. And vice versa. Something can be seen in me that's not seen in something else. And it can be one of those things that stifles your growth, man. Like, I feel like I'm close to a real breakthrough in my life on just doing some other shit, because I think the thing that's helped me be the person that I am today is that I never really got too confined to something that didn't work for me. Like, I'm not someone that's going to pretend or cosplay as someone other than myself. Like, when it comes to relationships and everything that I've dealt with up until this point, like, I find myself being the person that's intrigued by, at least when it comes to like the aspect of like woman, right? The thoughts and the shit that women don't tell you. I find that stuff interesting. Like, why did you get a train run on you in college? Like, and as crazy as that sounds, I like to know that type of stuff, because I be wanting to know where a motherfucker's brain was at when they did it. Like, or why did you sell drugs, dog? Like, why did you feel like you had to rob a motherfucker? Like, I be wanting to know the shit that motherfuckers really think. So personally, when it comes to me, I don't like people being around me pretending to do some shit that they don't want to do. Like, it's a big pet peeve for me. I don't like nobody being around me that isn't going to be their true, unfiltered, raw, authentic, uncut self. Like, I want to resonate with you, the person that's, either a really good individual by heart or a fucked up individual by nature, but that will be my choice to do so. Because at this point in my life, personally, like, I'm overdoing the fake shit. Whether the real shit be some bull, like just some wild shit, if I'm going to be involved with something, I want to be involved with it based off the authenticity of it. Like, I want to be involved in it based on what it is, completely unfiltered. I don't give a fuck if it's foul. I don't care if it's nasty. I don't care if it's crazy. I don't care if it's ridiculous. You know what I mean? I don't care if you eat bugs for a living, right? If I'm going to be involved, I want to be involved based on what it is and not the lie that motherfuckers try to pretend that shit is. Because I think one of the things that agitates me about today's day and time is that everybody's going so far out the way to be something that they're not and be fake. It's almost so to the point where you don't even really know who people are anymore. Like, a motherfucker, when you're meeting somebody, it's almost like you're meeting their spokesperson and not the real them. So, I mean, I'm one of them people, I just keep an open mind to everything, man. It's just, I hate closed-mindedness. I really can't stand a closed-minded person. Like, I can't stand it, bro, because it's like, how do you get anywhere only listening to your thoughts in your brain? But whatever, man. I'm finna go change these clothes over and put them in the dryer, and I'm finna head to the gym because a nigga got a lift, and it's Saturday. So I'm gonna do what I do, you do what you do. So whatever.